what I want to do is we'll come to questions, but I want to open up this question. I want to come to something that I've been thinking about, what I'm slightly worried about for the last couple of years, and it's very much on the academic side of things. I teach on a couple of master's programs, security and risk management, which gives me great pleasure. But when we get the essays in, all of the references, all of the great reference work is from the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. You know, it is Patrick Lagadec, it is Louise Comfort, it is Paul DeHart, it is Arjun Boyne, it is Naim Kapuchu, it is Gary Klein, you know, it is Carl Weick. These guys were writing 30, 40 years ago. Am I missing something? I mean, do we have a new generation of conceptualists and theoreticians? Because if you're using 1990 work to support our understanding, the academic understanding of 2020 through going to 2025, something's missing. So am I missing something? Is there a new generation of academics coming through, Patrick? Or are we just really are we still using those 1980s and 90s, great as they were? And I mean, I'm not saying they're not invalid or valid or relevant. They are very valid and relevant. But that was before we had mobile phones. That was before we had, you know, the internet pretty well. Where are the new thinkers coming from? Maybe they're there and I'm not seeing them, which if that's the case, I'll look for them. But I haven't seen them, and the people I'm teaching haven't seen them. Patrick?
Perhaps two ideas. First, there are very stimulating development on everything about social networks. You have a lot of people working and acting in this field, and I think we have to look at that very precisely. But I would fear that we stopped a little and we are just using the lessons we had from Johnson & Johnson and so on, 9/11 perhaps, but not so much. And we are so proud now to have preparation exercises, seminars and so on, with those lessons.
Yes.
And I have always thought about a sentence that Bismarck said at one point, saying that as long as the war college is in Paris, there's no problem for Germany. And the idea is, if we train people in crisis management to deal with crisis today, with the principle of yesterday, I think we are in the hands of the crisis and we are lost. So it's very important now to renew completely our approach of every single place where you teach, you exercise, you train people. Because if you are one war behind, it's like it was said in the Katrina report, why are we always a catastrophe behind? And the idea is not to give again and again and again the same lesson we learn, but why are we in a difficulty with these kind of challenges? And if we don't take the very deep these challenges are, I think we are lost.
It's very interesting. This week I received just one of those mail outs on LinkedIn or on the internet from a corporate crisis communications consultancy offering a program, but one of their case studies was Tylenol, Johnson & Johnson, 1982. And you go, well, I'm not saying that you can't learn from that, but 1982 was that's 38 years ago. That's like saying from 1940. I mean, it's a long, long time ago, my friend. You know, where is it? David, again, you're deeply involved in developing the next generation of people around the world. Do we have the next generation of academics, or as Patrick said, did we sort of stop there?
I founded a journal that now has a submission rate of 2,300 articles a year. Looking at those articles, it is striking how little innovation there is in them. We therefore try to have as high a rejection rate as possible. Sadly, what we would like to do is encourage people, but really we don't want to encourage them to reinvent the wheel as they seem to do. And that is the industrial disease of disaster academics, I think. You know, we've got 103 years of disaster studies. If you accept the hypothesis that it was the Halifax ship explosion of 1917 that started it all off, that's of course something one can discuss, but it's a nice idea. You know, we have a big bang and it starts off our universe. I rather like that. You often find also that people don't read the fundamental old stuff because we've got no repository, we've got no consensus on what you ought to have read. We know that certain people, the Stephen Flynns and Patrick Lagadecs of this world, are great, and therefore you ought to read them. There's an awful lot of stuff there that doesn't get read because it's old and it gets repeated, and that worsens the problem. But how much lateral thinking is there? How many people can get their heads around momentous changes that are going on in society? I think we don't connect up what goes on with society with what we do as academics. It's time we really started looking much more at the context, because society is changing far faster than disaster risk reduction is. It's changing far faster than government and governance is at the moment. And that really is eye-poppingly a matter of concern, but it's also something that should be a major feed into the sort of work we do. I know it's extremely hard. What we did in London was to found a discussion group called the Radix discussion group, where we just sit around and drink copious amounts of alcohol and hammer out particular problems. What we're trying to do with that, and anyone could do it anywhere if they've got enough interested people. There's no magic in it, but what we try to do there is simply to take a theme, for example, corruption and disasters, or human rights and disasters, or anything you like, COVID, and so on. And we simply hammer out the questions, and we try to explore that in such a way that we might get to what the essence of it is, or where we need to go in order to innovate and things like that. I think we need to do much more of that. Blue sky thinking, if you like, black sky thinking, if we're talking about electricity going off, etc. But how to innovate, we really need to think harder about that, given the way things are.
David, you say that there's a lot of old stuff that's not being read. There's a lot of new stuff that doesn't deserve to be read. I mean, I have to say that, you know, I mean, unfortunately, you know, the amount of derivative stuff and you know, just cut and pasted, and, you know, the fact you throw those few quotations in. I mean, again, Quarantelli and Dine was saying in 1973, you know, we're overwhelmed then. This was 47 years ago, they were overwhelmed. I mean, now we're literally overwhelmed. Stephen, again, you're deep in the academic, you know, coming to you as an academic, as somebody who's sort of trying to create the next generation of thinkers, you know, and people. Do we have a methodology? Do we have a 21st century methodology? Or are we still living off the 20th century methodologies?
We do not, but we're working. This actually is, you know, the body of work that I find myself doing. I think we have to think much more ambitiously about how we approach this challenge. And the term of art now in academia is called convergence research. And what we took it on at Northeastern was, I built it around what I call the barriers to resilience, and identified there were 5. The first was risk illiteracy. You're not going to get people to be resilient if they don't think there's going to be a bump in the night. The second is inadequate designs. We don't design for resilience, we design for efficiency. We design for safety when we're told to. At a micro level, that's an engineering problem. At a macro level, it's a planning, regional planning, you know, the level of issues. The third barrier, even if we had designs and we understood risks, well, nobody's going to do anything about it if there's no incentive for them to adopt the design, the best practice, the best tools, the applications. And that brings us in the realm of economics and public policy. And then we have a governance barrier, because these systems are complex and independent and don't pay attention to sectors and don't pay attention to jurisdiction. You've got a fundamental governance challenge. And then you have a training and education. What I pitched to my university was, are there any experts in this university that can help me with those barriers? because then we can take resilience on as a grand challenge. But then the next step was that even if we're good at it within our university, we're still in the ivory tower. One is, how do we partner with other universities? So we launched what's called the Global Resilience Research Network, which is now an affiliate of 37 research institutes and universities to support the same kind of cross-disciplinary, but across multi-institutions and across multiple geographies. But then all that is still academics talking to academics. The real challenge is, how do we actually turn the real world into a laboratory where we accelerate discovery, where we thrash out? And there is my view, is the disaster is where we provide it. Disasters give us a data-rich environment, and they give us the need to build back better and smarter. And so the challenge here is, how do we bring practitioners and the academics to the field, not in the immediate post-disaster environment where life safety is being worked out, but the immediate aftermath of that, when we're working to recovery. And then harvest lessons learned that then also can inform the ability to pilot the best practices and applications. And do this with, again, these multi-institutional teams drawn from multiple jurisdiction societies. So when they go back home, they're invested in and they have a relationship. But all these solutions will have to be localized in lots of ways for all the reasons we talked about. So the bottom line here is, there's ways to do this. And where we're most finding the richest areas, I think, for opportunity. So if we go, back to that continuum for the risk literacy about complex interdependency, there again, I think the most promising areas are areas of network science. But when network science, often scientists marvel at themselves when they can come up with something more complex than the guy before. And so the more complex it is, the giddier they get. That's useless for those of the rest of us who are mortal beings. So the challenge really is, how do I turn that into visualization and decision support tools for laymen? But we have powerful gaming and visualization tools now to allow us to do that, to take the complexity and allow it for people to start to do what ifs and to play through scenarios. But there, if we're successful though, we now have to monitor an environment to see if the risk that we're worried about is manifesting itself. That means it's a sensor-rich environment, which means I'm going to get data overload, which means I need artificial intelligence, ideally, to help manage that data more effectively. So you can see where I'm going. The reality is how we bring some of the harder sciences to bear around our knowledge set in the crisis environment about what the needs are, and see how those can be optimized. And at least what we're finding at my university is it's really animating the academics and the students, because they want to be involved with the grand challenge. They want to be involved with something that's clear and present versus just writing a paper around an isolated area. So, but the culture of the university, I've said this, I say to my young people all the time, and it was a theme that was captured here, is every important challenge of our time is inherently multidisciplinary and multi-jurisdictional. And if you want to be successful in academia, stay within your discipline. And if you want to be successful in government, stay within your jurisdiction. So, and I think, Patrick, you said earlier, so we work on the marginal ones, or David, maybe you put it there. We work on the marginal problems here because the rewards are for that, not these grand challenges. And so the key is, and I think this kind of dialogue is important, but for us, it's most important is the engagement with the practitioner, is finding the opportunities where we can essentially work collaboratively in academia, in the real world, to accelerate discovery and validation. And that's something we still are in the early stages of doing.
It's interesting because, I find, as you know, the ISRM is a very, very young institute, but we're very good at building relationships, I must say that. We've got yourself at GRA, Stephen, and we've got, just on this call, we've got Zoran Kekovic coming from Belgrade, we've got David Horreby in Geneva Center for Security Policy, Ed Borojic, who many, many people will know. And it's great, and I'm really pleased that you're here, and thank you very, very much. And next time we probably get you guys on the panel. I want to throw something out here, because as you said, Stephen, what we need is a platform. We've got the knowledge, we've got the expertise, what we need is a platform. So I'm going to throw something out. It is my belief, and I've discussed this with you, Stephen, but I've discussed this with a lot of people over the last couple of years. It is my belief that if we look at the crises we're facing, the level of impact is naturally at the city level. It is cities that get done. And it seems to me that there's also, that is the level of response. We look at Houston, or we look at Caracas, or we look at Belgrade, or we look at, Bogota. That's the natural area of influence and impact. You know, it's a natural working environment. And of course, the beauty is, going back to my opening phrase of impact and influence, it's a hell of a lot easier to have conversations and have impact at the city level than it is at the national level. So I'll come to you, but I would like to offer the ISRM as a facilitating platform. There was, of course, the 100 resilient cities under the Rothschild program, which sort of then stopped. But I would like to offer the ISRM, if anybody's interested in having this conversation, I would very, very much like to offer the ISRM as a platform to try and put something together. And let's try and find, we've got connections all over the world, as you have. Let's find somewhere, as you said, that we can work with this, whether it's Belgrade, or whether it's Geneva, or whether it's Colombo, or Bogota, or Houston. Let's find somewhere where we as a global community can bring our expertise and say, we will offer ourselves in order to try and make something happen. And whether there's interest or not, I don't know. Sorry, Stephen, please come on in.
Oh, the only thing, refinement I would make here is metro region versus city. Because the challenge here is cities often don't control many of the systems they rely on that sprawl beyond that city. And, you know, power, water may come from rural areas that come into that. So if you go just to the city, you can see the problems and challenges manifest themselves. They have to respond to it, but they aren't actually in a position often to drive the change of the systems they're relying on. And so that's where I think the metro region is sort of a key issue. It's certainly US context, national is just, the country is too big and too complex for a national response. There's a big difference between the Southwest and the Northeast. So you really get benefit out of regional. But we roughly identify, you know, that there are about a dozen major metro regions, and those are the ideal places where you, in the US context, you can start to see how that can play itself out in more broader European, and then network each other. But if you just go to the city and you're just talking to the mayor may not control much of anything that in fact is their fate or destiny. So this is where, again, breaking down jurisdictions is key. But your instincts are spot on, and I think there's a path to take us in that direction.
I have a feeling it might be more complex than I have suggested by my statement. Just on one point, somebody said try out Lagos as a case study. I spent 2.5 years in Lagos. I actually wrote a paper about Lagos being a city of the future. You know, that is what it is, because it is completely and utterly unmanaged, and yet it is self-functioning in terms of micro negotiations, you know, within chaos. Anybody picks up Lagos, good luck to you. Guys, we've got about 7 minutes. We can go a couple minutes over. My question to you now is, please feel free to sum up what we've done here. And I'm going to be unfair. I'm going to throw in a question that says, right, 2025, what's the crisis of 2025 going to look like? Because whatever the crisis of 2025 look like is, I think we probably can't conceive of it now, just as last year we couldn't have conceived of COVID-19 doing this to us. But will the crisis of 2025 be a continuation of what we've got now more? Or is it going to be, you know, Patrick, I'm going to come back to your phrase, the unknowable and the inconceivable, in which case, good luck to us all. Patrick, I'll start off with you. And feel free to just, again, feel free to just give an overarching summing up, please.
Perhaps two ideas I had listening everything. Some years ago, we went for the 30th anniversary of the Disaster Research Center in Delaware. And many people were giving very stimulating presentation on taking one idea of Dines and Corontelli and going further. But I told Corontelli at the end, what I would have liked to see from the young people in the research would be to pick up the question you had at the beginning of your studies and the breakthrough you had to go through, and to ask themselves what kind of breakthrough we have to make today, as you did at the beginning of your studies, and not just to prolong what you did. Corontelli was okay with that. Second idea, when you say cities, okay, yes, but I would say let's try any initiatives to have a kind of platform, because perhaps it will be a problem in the rural areas. With the COVID now, it's very strange in France. you have less problem in Paris than in the rural, very remote locations. And this is very counterintuitive. So perhaps rural areas are a problem. And what we saw in the social unrest in France at the beginning of this year, it was a rural problem. And perhaps the terrible problem in the US with the voting, so perhaps it's not clearly a city problem, perhaps it's rural. So we don't know. Perhaps we have to go with many different initiatives and see what happens and what we can crop from that, and not just going to on one line. So Lagos, let's go to Lagos, but perhaps there is something completely different to go at the same time and to see what can we do and to go with the most creative people. Do you have an idea? Let's go and let's try something perhaps very focused, very clear, and then we look where we went with these ideas. So it will be very intuitive, very open, and very creative. This would be my recommendation.
No, I agree. It has to be multi-stranded. I think offering to take on cities is enough for me. I'll let other people do other stuff. I mean, we have some fantastic conversations coming in. What we will do is we're going to publish an ebook around this conversation. Probably take us 3 or 4 weeks, but we will also include the conversations as part of that ebook. And of course, we also, what I think we will do is, I think we're going to set up a LinkedIn group to carry on this discussion. Hopefully all you gentlemen will take part in that. Because I think just, again, having the platform for people to interact, and to swap ideas is a good thing to do. David Alexander.
Well, many years ago, many years ago, Quarantelli phoned me up and said, I'm inviting you to a conference in Delaware. I've invited all sorts of people and they've all said no, so I'm inviting you. It made me feel really wanted. But anyway, I suppose this is my final offering. Hopefully it won't be quite so dystopian, and hopefully someone will actually listen to us. But sometimes it is a bit vox clamantis in deserto. So I do hope that we could get the word out and somehow change things. But I think it will require political acumen to do so, and support.
Thank you, David. Well, that is it. I mean, gentlemen, wow. Just thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you much for your lifetime of service and development. The ISRM was set up with the specific mission, and it says so on our website, to create a space where academics, policymakers, and practitioners can come together to have meaningful and significant discussions about the issues we are facing. And that, I think, is what we have done. So thank you very much. I hope this is only the starting point. Like I say, we will send a lot of information out. We will create a LinkedIn group for people to come in and share. We will send up follow-up information. I think, Anita Punwani, I am optimistic now. Great session. That's what the note we want to finish on. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much to everybody. On behalf, can I please ask the global audience to show your appreciation in a way, which is either transfer $100 into our bank accounts or just to say something nice. Thank you. Say thank you to everybody. It's been a real pleasure. Good luck to everybody, and we will do it again with beer and wine and barbecue. Okay, Steve, I think that's your job to do that one. All right. To everybody, it's been fantastic. We will be sending stuff out. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless. Be safe. We'll see you next time.